Good to have you with us in this edition of the Urban Debate. Straight up, viewers, tonight we begin with a focus on this new Corona color code that the government has put out for us. Now, there are multiple colors from red to orange and green, and the whole country is now going to be divided into these colors. What does it mean? If you're in a red zone or an orange zone or a green zone, what does it mean for you? How does life change now? What happens in a few weeks? And why exactly are you in these zones? Are these districts in these specific color codes? That's what we're going to be looking at, simply to understand, nothing else, for you and I to understand why is it that some of us may be in a red zone and will have tougher days coming ahead, while some of us could be in a better place in life if we are in a green zone. Just to begin with, what is a red zone? Well, it's the highest caseload or hotspot districts in our country. So these are areas where you will see a high number of coronavirus cases emerge. In fact, actually these red zones are what really consist of 80% of the coronavirus cases in our country. There are also districts with cases that are doubling in less than 4 days. So if in a district, this is a red zone now, there were 50 cases just a few days ago, 4 days later, there are 100 cases that we are looking at. That's the rate, and which is why it's in red zone. Then there is an orange zone. These are the districts with limited cases or with no fresh case that seem to have emerged in the last 2 weeks. So either they have less case or no fresh case in the last 2 weeks. And that essentially means that yes, while the scrutiny will continue and some restrictions will continue, you are perhaps on your way to be out of this coronavirus battle. And finally is the green zone, and we have quite a few in our country, by the way. The green zones are the districts with no positive cases, and or they may have had some cases last month, but in the past 28 days, they've not reported any positive case, not a single case. And they get declared as the green zone. They would have a lot more freedom than others in red zone and orange zone. But these are just the basics. How do we come to these conclusions? And what are the specific restrictions? How will the governments deal with these various zones? That's the big question that I'm going to be asking our panelists tonight. So let's say good evening to Dr. Gautam Bhansali, consultant physician with the Bombay Hospital. He's also a member of the Maharashtra Task Force. Dr. Subhash Salunke, he's senior advisor with the Public Health Foundation of India. And we've also got Dr. Pinto, consultant pulmonologist with Hinduja Hospital and MRC, joining us this evening. Thank you so much. Let me go across to Dr. Bhansali first. Dr. Bhansali, we've had a series of conversations. Maharashtra is that one state where we see all kinds of categories in large numbers. There are some red zones, but there are also some districts that have largely not been badly impacted by coronavirus. Can you help us explain, in a red zone, how does life change?
Yeah, like Richard, Maharashtra is, as of now, there are 7 districts. Hello?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So Maharashtra 7 district. There is completely you can say is a green zone. 7 district where there is cases of coronavirus is totally 0 till now, and 9 districts are there where cases are hardly 1 or 2 in that 9 districts. So the now government and their new guideline, as per the new guideline, we are separated that all the district in the 3 part. One is red zone, one is green zone, one is orange zone. So in these categories, red zone are the main hotspot area where we have to look into. We have to say like Mumbai, Pune, Nagpur, they are the red zone area. And where we have to see, we have to do the rapid antibody test, which is going to come in next day or 2. And we have to do cluster containment. We have to see the like slum area like Dharavi or Bandra or that Valli, Kolivada sort of areas. And we have to see that case should come down. We have to treat patient immediately. We made so many facilities, like we have dedicated COVID hospital in Mumbai, where we will treat patient who is critically ill in that COVID dedicated hospital. Some hospital we marked as a isolation center. Some hospital we put patient only asymptomatic but COVID positive patients. So now the plan is that we should have different type of zone. We look into the hotspot area and we should come with the war footage level, and we have to fight with this kind of corona activities. Second thing, we are planning to do testing like antibody testing. We are planning to do rapid antigen, and that is going to be in Maharashtra in next 2-3 days. Where our plan is to do this maximum testing in the cluster area where we find it's a red, it's a hotspot sort of area, and we should do maximum testing, and we will try that once that new cases will not come. If that area is below the category of this orange zone, then we can say okay, now we can convert into the orange zone, and if there is no new case in 28 days, then we will see that it's a green zone area. So our major focus is right now is a hotspot area, red zone area, where we have to see, we have to look into that problem of that public, and do maximum testings.
Okay, Dr. Pinto, let me also come across to you because there are quite a few red zones in our country right now. Now, what would be your advice to people who are in these zones? Because while yes, for the health experts and for the government officials, they know how to go about it. Those who are in these zones will be wondering what exactly does it mean?
So I think people need to realize that this is an effort to contain the virus across the country. If you are in a red zone, it means that there is a higher probability of you being infected. And I think as a responsible citizen, what people in red zones really need to do is, number one, be open to testing. I see there's a lot of reluctance to getting tested these days. There's a lot of fear among people. I think the idea is that if you are open to testing, you do not resist testing too much, you work as communities. If people do get tested as being positive, they're rapidly quarantined. We arrest the spread in those areas. And one needs to be responsible and realize that this is going to come at a price. So if you are in a red zone, there is a cluster of cases around you. The probability of you getting infected is high. Therefore, there are measures in place to protect you and to protect other individuals in that zone. So I think social distancing, respecting the lockdown, making sure that we interact with others in a very responsible fashion is almost a responsibility if you're in the red zone, because it's kind of on your shoulders that everybody hopes that this virus doesn't spread further. So it's going to come with a lot of discomfort, but I think this will all lead to a good outcome in the long run, and I think that's the way one needs to look at it in a red zone.
Okay, would all the red zones have similar rules, or does that depend on states? For example, are we to assume that if we are in a red zone, then we will not be allowed to step out at all, that the government will actually get the essential goods also delivered to our place?
So again, I'm not an expert in policy, but I presume that there will be some sort of leeway based on state governments deciding what is appropriate to the local scenario, to the population density in a local area, to the probability of individuals living in circumstances where quarantine at home may not be that possible. So I think all these factors will play an important role in locally determining how to enforce these red zones. But again, I'm not an expert. Maybe somebody who works in public health would be better suited to answer this question.
Yes. Yeah, let me actually also ask Dr. Bhansali. Dr. Bhansali, do all the red zone have the same rules, or does it depend on each state government what the restrictions are?
Yeah, see, red zone, the criteria for the red zone is you have to see 80, if the cases of 80% cases are there of the state, then is a red zone area, or 80%, and in the district, 80% of the cases within the district, that area is considered as a red zone area. Now, as per the demographic condition of the different state, different district, with that conditions, red zone area is divided. So definitely it will be little bit difference in the state wise, but overall scenario, if you see, the criteria is for the more than 80% cases in that area, particular state or particular district or particular ward, then new cases, 80% new cases in that area within 14 days, then it will consider as a red zone area. So the policy will be little bit different state wise, but again, it's all depend on the demographic and densely populated city like Mumbai and other district also.
Okay, largely, if, Dr. Pinto, from your own understanding, if today people are in a certain district which has been declared as the red zone, should they then brace themselves for a longer haul and perhaps beyond May 3rd, at least prepare themselves mentally that there may still be restrictions in their area?
Absolutely. So I think the nature of the disease and the future of how we're going to handle this will be fluid. These things are not going to remain static. So I think like what Dr. Bhansali mentioned, if a person stays in a red zone for an X amount of time and there are no new cases, they would be downgraded possibly to an orange zone. Vice versa, if somebody in an orange zone suddenly, if people in an orange zone start experiencing a higher prevalence or a higher incidence of the infection, they might be upregulated to a red zone. So I think the future is not a universal lockdown, but there could be possible sporadic spreads, sporadic outbreaks that happen in clusters. And those clusters would possibly be brought down under a stricter zone. And these things, I think, will move up and down with time. So if you are currently in a red zone, I think the way to look at it is that if you do your best in terms of helping the government, doing everything that's best in your interests, maybe you will quickly get downgraded to an orange zone. Versus if it becomes challenging to maintain the usual principles that we are enforcing, then you might have to stay in a prolonged lockdown for a very, very long time. So I think we're all in it together, therefore, and it's in everybody's best interest to cooperate with the zoning.
Oh yes, absolutely. I think it is because one small mistake here or there, just a handful of people thinking they can get away with it or they will not impact anybody else, can actually put us a couple of steps back, and that's absolutely not something that we don't want right now. So everybody needs to follow these zones. But what happens? Let's talk a little bit about the orange zone, Dr. Bhansali. In orange zone, obviously the restrictions will be slightly lesser. What kind of restrictions will be put in place? What is the relief that people can expect?
See, what I understand from this zone and what policies may going on, that if the area is in green zone, then you will allow people who can move around or who can go out and they can work. But the border of the district will be sealed. Like people should not come from other district to that district which is completely green zone. So this kind of policy is going to happen. Like if Akola is totally in orange zone, suppose, and that Solapur is in the Maharashtra, Solapur is totally in a green zone, then people can roam around in the Solapur only, but they cannot go out of the Solapur to some other district, or some other district fellow should not come in. And I feel that at government level, there may be some decision regarding that small scale industries, like the worker is like 5, 10, 20 or less than 100, and they will allow to work, to manufacture the things. So I feel that in orange zone and this green zone, there will be some sort of liberty, but definitely in a red zone, the lockdown will be continue, and there will be definitely some strict policy or strict like social distancing, hand washing, stay at home. That all rules will follow there.
Okay, so as far as the orange zones are concerned, that is where people will have a little bit more of movement possible, perhaps not from coming from other zones, but within that area at least some amount of activity can be expected. Yes. Now, of course, these are the things that I'm talking about will get implemented only post April 20th. Right now, all the state governments are actually only working on this for each of their states. So each state is identifying their zones with the medical experts and the ICMR, and then designing their policies as to what will happen in these districts. Dr. Bhansali, for example, let's take Maharashtra. Now, where do people go to find out what zone they live in? Is there a proper portal for that, or can we call the authorities? Yes. Or will announcements be made? How do we know where we are staying?
Yeah, that all the website, like website is a Maharashtra Health Department website, BMC Task Force Department website, and all the areas like central government website. Everybody, the zone, the area, all are completely divided. There are clear-cut guidelines regarding that. Orange zone, red zone, and green zone. So you can see, anybody can go to Google or can go to that Arogya Setu app also. You should download the Arogya Setu app, and where you can find that all kind of information, which zone, which is the hotspot area, which is the green zone, which is the orange zone, and when this orange zone will convert into the green zone, or when red zone will convert into the green or orange zone. So this kind of all information are already displayed in all the websites. Ministry of Health, Maharashtra government, Ministry of Health, cabinet, that central government, everybody is displays are there. But I feel that, as Modi ji rightly said, that our Prime Minister, जान है लेकिन जहान भी है. So जान है तो जहान है. Earlier he said, but now he is saying that जान है but जहान भी है. So for that they have distributed all these areas, red, green, zone, and then with that they are planning to start small industries and manufacturing, some transport, good transport, that kind of activity. I feel after 20th April will start.
Okay, Dr. Subhash Salunke is also joining us on the phone line, though we have a bit of a network issue connecting live with him. Dr. Salunke, thank you so much for speaking with us. We're just trying to make people understand so that, instead of panicking or wondering what this really means, we just break it down for them what this Corona color code really is. Now, we are on the topic of orange zones. Can you help us understand a little bit more? Is the orange zone policy also going to be the same nationwide, or it can differ from district to district and state to state?
I think according to my perception, in case of our country like India, it can't be so uniform throughout the country in every state. So even though a red, orange and green zone, there will be the state government along with the administrations will have to work it out, that there will be some flexibility, and depending upon the demographic socio-economic profile of the concerned district, what kind of an industrial activities are there, and the number of factors will be taken into consideration. In spite of the fact, there will be the zoning will depend upon the cases, but actual implementation part will depend on number of other factors. So the orange zone in, say, in a state like Maharashtra, within, say, nearing the Mumbai, and orange zone, say, suppose in a neighboring state, there will be some differences. Commonality will be there. That means, suppose there are X number of cases, that will be common, but the rest of the other components will definitely differ.
Okay, and for people staying in orange zone, what should they keep in mind in terms of their own behavior, in terms of the rules that they need to follow, and possibly, obviously it's difficult because it depends on how well we fight coronavirus in each area, but possibly for how long will they have to be under restrictions or lockdown?
Feel there will be, whether irrespective of the zone, whether you are in zone green or orange or red, some factors will continue. As I was informing my colleagues, in our lifestyle from now onwards, like we wear, we use clothes, wearing mask will become an integral part of our life. You cannot avoid to use mask irrespective of the zone, because corona is not going to go away from our. So ensuring that we want to protect ourselves, so physical distancing part, wearing mask, using, ensuring that we use proper hand wash, all these factors, all these, behavioral patterns that we have adopted now should become necessarily, not should, must become a way of life after the third or, even though this lockdown will be released as and when it will be, but these things will not go away and must not go away. There is no way we can say that chalo bhai ab khatam ho gaya, mask mat pehno, haath mat dho, ye nahi hone wala. We have to continue with this way.
Okay, the other thing, Dr. Bhansali, maybe I can come back to you on that. In the green zones, and like you said initially, each state has quite a few of these green zones where there are no cases, where there have been no cases reported in the last 28 days. Can life be completely normal in these zones?
See, as you saw on the screen that there are total 718 districts, and out of that 170 district is considered as a red hotspot area. The rest all like 304 district, they are still as a green zone area. Green zone area means life may be bit easy, but you have to maintain all the protocols, all the guideline, except that lockdown may be bit easier, or people may go out or work there within the area, within the district. If nearby district is affected from the hotspot or orange area, then they should not move out, or other people should not come in. But life will be definitely bit easier for the people who are in the green zone area, because they don't want that green zone should suffer with the orange area or red hotspot area. But they have to maintain all the things like physical distancing. They have to maintain that physical distancing. They have to maintain that hand washing, sanitizer, judiciously use of the mask, which were required, then they should use only. If not required, then they should not use. And people who, if they are having any kind of sore throat, cough, cold, they should go to the doctor. They should report to the doctor. Sometimes patients are asymptomatic. Sometimes initial report may come negative, and it turned out to be positive after some time, maybe sometime in third week it turned out to be positive. So we have to be very careful, we have to be very cautious. It doesn't mean that we are in green zone and we are completely out of the corner. No, it's not like that. We have to be cautious, we have to follow all the rules and regulations. Except lockdown may be little bit easier, life will be little bit easier.
Okay, Dr. Pinto, let's get back to the issue of red zones, because that's of course the biggest challenge. All the hot spots and the red zones that we have, and to deal with that scenario. Now, what should be the policy going forward, especially for crowded clusters? Even as we speak, we are seeing more and more cases emerge from the Govandi, crowded cluster, even from Dharavi. Today, we had a significant spike in the number of cases that were reported. Is there a need for change in policy for these red zones?
So I think one of the major changes that is being proposed and is going to be enforced soon is community level testing and screening. I think the kits are on their way, or they have reached us already. And the idea being you do a wide net and you try and screen everybody who has positive antibodies on these screening kits. And these kits are rapid. They don't involve expertise. There's not a lot of exposure to the individuals doing it, so they are safer in that sense. It will give us a better idea of the current situation in the community in terms of who are the suspects, who are the confirmed, who are the possible ones who've already been infected and have healed. Once we start doing this on a wider scale, I think that's going to be a turning point in terms of strategy for the hotspots, because we will try and gradually identify almost every case in these hotspots and quarantine and isolate such individuals. Of course, we will have to be as careful as we have been in the past 14 days or so in terms of the lockdown. We cannot allow clusters of individuals to come together. And in all of this messaging, when we talk about the zones, etc., it's easy to lose sight of the fact that we are doing well with these policies. For the first time, I think it's been about 6 days for our numbers to double, and that's a significantly good number. Most countries which have had the worst have had doubling times of about 3 days and 4 days. We've managed to bring it to 6 days. We also know that the zoning was done in Kerala and has worked really well. Kerala has almost flattened the curve. There are hardly any new cases developing in Kerala. So I think this message also needs to go out that there is a lot of optimism that if we do this right, we will probably succeed at having a much better result than what other countries have had so far. So I think in terms of strategy, what is really going to change, though, is community level testing in these hotspots to try and identify the so-called hidden cases which are not out there.
So ideally, the way to go forward, Dr. Bhansali, would require a high level of testing in the containment zones or the red zones as we are looking at right now.
Yes, definitely. We are looking for that high level of testing and pool testing. You can say that we should do in the containment area or the cluster area like the Dharavi area or Worli Kolivada area or that Bandra where we have seen 2 days back only. There were a lot of crowd was there. So we want that there should be cluster containment and the testing should be done, screening should be done at a very fast level. So that's why that rapid antigen testing that is coming on the way only. There are some limitation of that testing that because the test may come, if you do test in the day 1, 2, 3, 4, then that may be falsely negative because of the antibody in your body. It will take 5 to 7 days at least. So if you do test on the day 7, day 8, then the test will be correctly. You can say that yes, patient is a positive or negative. But it's a cheaper test. You can do you can get result within a 10-15 minutes, like that only. So testing is definitely required. But with your channel, with Mirror Now, is a very good channel, and with that channel, I will appeal to everybody that please cooperate with the healthcare staff, doctors, nurses. They are coming to you. They are there for you. If they survive, then only you can survive. Then you can be saved. Otherwise, if they are not survive, don't attack on the doctors. They are your friend. They are your healthcare staff. We are living our family at home, and we are working day and night on the field. Only doctors, healthcare staff, they are the person who come and meet with the corona patient. Nobody else coming and meet with the corona patient. Why you are taking stone and stone? But I don't know from where they are getting stone. And if you see that how people wearing PPE kit, it's a 3-layer kit. We get suffocated while wearing the PPE kit. And people are throwing the stone on the doctor or the technician or the people. It's not good. Please cooperate. It's our sincere request. We doctors, we are here for the constructive work. We are not here for the destructive work. So please, God sake. And today, Salman Khan, I spoke to him 2 days back only, though he appealed to all the kind of people. He gave some he used some harsh word to the people who is doing this kind of stone pelting. So please, and I appeal to the public, the rest of the public, that they should take action what they are doing. How can they do this kind of things? This should not be allowed at all at the government level or public level, any level. But it should be stopped immediately. Government should take strict action. We doctors, हम लोगों ने लड़ना सीखा. We are not trained for that कि हमको मारना भी आता है. We are trained for to save life. We are not trained for to beat people.
Okay, yes, I do take your point, and I think more and more people need to come out and make these appeals for others to also understand. So that's done. But what happens as far as the government policy and action is concerned, and to what extent can we see that being ramped up? Because Dr. Pinto, unless and until we ramp up our testing, this lockdown is not going to help us. How will we judge just what our progress is?
No, so the idea of a lockdown is clearly not the solution. The government knows that as well. The idea of the lockdown is to build up your infrastructure, to build up your resources, so that during the period of the lockdown, while you've arrested, while you try to flatten the curve, you build up infrastructure. And I think the government has been trying its best. There are hospitals which have been set up across the city now. There's Seven Hills, for example, in Mumbai, which within a span of 1 week, I think the infrastructure was ramped up significantly. The testing kits are going to be rolled out. So I think, the availability of PPE is an issue over the world, but I think the government is trying to do its best. And I cannot emphasize the need for PPEs more for doctors, because the last thing we would want in a situation like this is half of the doctors falling sick and being at home, and then you don't have anybody to care for these patients. However, I do think the government is doing its best on all these fronts during the period of the lockdown, such that when we do come out from a quasi, we kind of open up the lockdown, we would be much better prepared than we were 14 days back had we just let things go on.
Yes, of course, the focus now becomes the way forward and how we continue from here on. The other thing, Dr. Bhansali, and many people are actually writing to me right now and asking this question, what is the kind of movement that can happen between different zones? Is that allowed at all?
No, it should not be allowed. Like if you see, there's a criteria is very clear cut. If you are in green zone, then definitely you may be allowed to move out, but only in the green zone. District, statewide, that area will be closed completely. District border will be closed completely. The person will not allowed to move from one district to other district if the other district is not in the green zone. Green zone people can move around only in the green zone area. They will not allowed to move in the orange zone or red zone, or red zone people will not allowed to move in the orange zone or green zone. That will be very clear-cut guideline in that color coding. And second thing, government may start, as I told you, that Jaan bhi hai or Jahan bhi hai. So they may start some small state industries like local workers, that kind of things, furniture works, routine work sort of, some like carpentry work, that kind of work may be allowed, road construction work, irrigation project, that may be allowed. But you should not expect everything will be allowed in a very less time. It will not be allowed, I feel.
I actually do agree with you, because I think we need to be slightly more cautious even now and in the coming days. Yes, the central government has decided that post April 20th, some amount of relaxation and a graded relaxation will begin. But perhaps we need to be a lot more careful as we move forward. We are going to see any which ways a massive economic impact of these decisions that we've taken. Might as well at least ensure that it's worth it completely as far as the health factor is concerned. Thank you so much to both of you panelists, and thank you also for Dr. Salunke. Unfortunately, we couldn't get him back on this panel. Now, this is where we've broken it down for you viewers as to what each of these zones really mean. In red zone, it's essentially in many places just door-to-door delivery. You're not allowed to step out. Even if you do step out, it will be highly regulated, because there is a high number of cases, and cases might just be doubling each 4 days, which is why that's the most dangerous zone, which is under the scanner of the authorities to ensure that the number of cases there come down. Hence, the restrictions will be the strictest in these red zones. Then comes the orange zone, where there are quite a few cases, but in the last 2 weeks or so, perhaps they haven't seen any new case emerge. So they are well on their way to proper recovery. So they need to follow the social distancing norms. They still need to follow some amount of restrictions, can't have a normal life, but their life will be a lot better than those who are living in red zone. And if they are disciplined, and if you are disciplined living in an orange zone, then you can hope to emerge out of it sooner than later. The green zone are the districts that haven't seen any patients and any coronavirus cases in the last 28 odd days, 4 weeks that is, which means essentially that largely they are unharmed and they have emerged corona free to a great extent. Here you can see a lot more activity, economic activity, business activity, a lot more of movement, lesser restrictions, but still be careful. Like our experts were saying, you can go on the Arogya Setu app and find out where you stay and what is that zone color code. Now, while this is being explained to us, what does this really mean in terms of a policy? Should we become a little more free with the orange zones and green zones, or should the states wait? Yes, the centre has said that after April 20th, the relaxations can come in. But should the states be a little more cautious? There is a debate over there for the way forward up till May 3rd. And that's going to be the debate after a very short break. So stay with me as we take this conversation ahead on the Urban Debate. Welcome back. Continuing with the big conversation that we were having, and now shifting focus to what should the strategy be for the states. Now remember viewers, Prime Minister Modi, just a few days ago when he announced the extension of lockdown till 3rd of May, also said that for the first 1 week we are going to observe an extremely strict lockdown. But after that, after April 20th, there will be certain areas and zones where relaxation can come in, depending on the number of cases and how disciplined citizens have been in following the norms. States can then begin looking at reviving some amount of activity in different zones. But there is a debate here. Some believe that maybe we are moving too quickly. Maybe a strict complete lockdown should be observed at least for a period of 5 to 6 weeks. Some believe it's high time that while we do battle coronavirus, there is an economic cost also involved, which will also impact people in many ways in the coming months. And so we cannot afford to be completely at standstill and in a complete shutdown mode anymore. But what about the fact that if you start to relax these issues, these restrictions, and people begin to come out, how will we ensure social distancing? Is there a concern? Let's get multiple views on this conversation and ask this question: if the states should also hold their horses, perhaps wait till 3rd of May before actually bringing in any kind of relaxation. Let's say good evening to Dr. Shashank Joshi, Dean for Indian College of Physicians with the Leelavati Hospital, Dr. Om Srivastava, Director for the Infectious Diseases at Jaslok Hospital and Research, Ritupriya, Medical Doctor and Professor of Public Health, Center for Social Medicine and Community Health with the JNU, joins us this evening. Dr. Joshi, good evening to you. Let's begin with you. What's your own sense? Are we in a situation safe enough for us to start bringing in some relaxations?
So if you look at Mumbai city today, we are very clearly in the red zone, and many parts of India are in red zone. So if you are in red zone, I don't think we are ready for it. But if you are in a green zone, probably you need to start a smart, gradual unlocking. So, you should not suddenly jump out and start clustering again. We will need to maintain some form of distancing, behaving smartly, maintaining high index of hygiene, and gradually get back to work. So I think, and very gradually we'll have to get back to normalcy. See, we have come to a new normal, and therefore please don't be in a rush. But it is equally important that we get our economy back, we get the livelihoods back, we get the food and rations back, and that is also equally critically important. But in the red zones and in the orange zones, we need right now to continue the lockdown, and it has to be a serious total lockdown. I think people are not following it seriously, so that is also equally important. But in the green zones, I think a graded step down unlocking, which is mindful, which is carefully done, is the order of the day, because that is going to be our future.
Dr. Srivastav, do you agree?
Yes, to a very large extent, I agree. See, you cannot have this kind of a lockdown for a very prolonged period of time, because first thing, it is not practical. Second thing is, you're going to be looking at that sector, that is the daily wages, the worker. That sector will need some kind of relief for their livelihood. That is one. The other thing that we probably need to look at, not so much from the point of view of public health, but there is the agriculture sector. If we do not let them reap their crops and sow it for the next season, there is going to be a food crisis of unimaginable proportions in the coming 12 months. So you will need to give some relief to those sectors, especially where like Shashank has just said, especially where there is no red zone. The places where you're having more and more patients, or the number of patients are not declining, you'll need to ensure that kind of lockdown. They will need to be monitored for a little bit longer, not just a little bit. That period might go on for a substantial period. It does not mean that everybody in the country needs to be homebound or quarantined for the entire duration. Some sectors can certainly start going into a mode where they will begin to become productive, and that in the given few weeks, maybe a month, maybe a little bit longer, we should be able to come to a state where there is a happy balance, and that the normalcy that we are talking about can come into existence in a graded fashion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here is what it is. Even say, for example, the orange zones, Dr. Joshi. In the orange zones also, various states are looking at bringing about some kind of relief, lifting some restrictions. Obviously, red zones are a different scenario altogether. What about the orange zones? Should we be looking at relief before May 3rd at least?
I think in the orange zones you need lot of caution, because remember, there are a lot of spreaders which may be hidden and asymptomatic, and if you have hidden asymptomatic spreaders in those zones, I think a week or 10 days might be prudent. But there could be gradual unlocking of some essential services which are needed for day to day. Also, in a very mindful, as I said, a very graded manner, the orange zones also can systematically open up. But this will need a lot of cooperation from people and from the law enforcement agencies as well as the healthcare agencies. If that is done appropriately, even in the orange zones, some parts can be unlocked. And it is not impossible. As I agree with Om completely, that we cannot just completely be fully, totally locked. But as long as they follow highest public hygiene as well as maintain a distance with a little cloth on their face, I think even the orange zones can go ahead. But this will need the local authorities to take a mindful and a conscious call based on case-to-case situation. But remember, a lot of asymptomatic spreaders, which are called as silent spreaders, may still be there, and that is why it is orange. It may not be red, it may not be green. So some Lakshman Rekha might be blurred here.
But we're already having so much trouble, and let me actually go across with this point to Dr. Ritupriya. Dr. Ritupriya, we are already having so much trouble ensuring that there are no lockdown violators, ensuring that social distancing is maintained. Should we be right now looking at relief already, or would you say that at least till May 3rd we should wait?
Well, Tanvi, I think since almost half our districts don't have even one case as of now, we do have a case for opening up in a limited way. What we need to do clearly is balance between controlling the spread of the virus and controlling the fallouts of a lockdown, which are both economic and humanitarian. Hunger could stalk large numbers of people, and of course, there is a psychological cost to pay. So balancing that is a very strategic act, and coming from a public health perspective, I would say we certainly have a case for using the zoning very, very carefully and strategically. For instance, as you were asking just now about the orange zones, in all the three zones, there is a constant movement across zones. So while the center will be divided and the states will be dividing districts into green, orange, and red, similar and potential hotspots and already ongoing hotspots, each state government and within districts, the administrations will have to have their teams on the ground from healthcare workers, from all the other administrative agencies together to be keeping a watchful and empathetic eye. If they do that, then government and NGOs and community have to come together to see that the orange does not become red. At the same time, I would say we have to be clear that in the long run, there is going to be an element of spread over time. What we are trying to do right now is buy time, slow the pace of spread, and by that have things in place so that we can minimize the health impact as well as the economic impact. And it is this balancing act which has to be done. So I would completely agree with the fact that after the 20th, limited agricultural activity, food processing, Manrega schemes should start off where we do not have cases, so that workers in these areas can start earning and economic activity starts, essential goods are produced and can be moved across to parts which need it. Industries which can house their workers with social distancing can start off, maybe sometimes not to full capacity, but to half or 25% as has been suggested.
So, but of course, one thing is there, Dr. Srivastava, that movement between different zones cannot absolutely be permitted at all. Even when we talk about a green zone, there will have to be a very strict eye kept on who's coming in and out. Dr. Srivastava?
Yes, of course, you're absolutely right, Tanvi. The point is that that there is a new real for all of us in the country, right? And that knowing the way this virus can be communicated, it is a very communicable, highly infectious virus. The kind of social distancing that is required will continue. We'll need to continue doing that because we don't want a second episode or a third episode or a fourth one that keeps coming every 2 or 3 months or every new season. That's not the kind of price that this country can afford to pay. So I think that the minute you take your eye off this virus is the time that you're going to be making a mistake and finding that all the good that has come from this social distancing and this clampdown will probably be coming to no returns. So yes, even when the numbers have declined or become a small percentage of what it is at this time, even then you are going to have to keep a very watchful eye on the total amount of people who are presenting with new infections or those areas where we are making the same mistakes again and again. And that is why you are going to need to have not just public health, but other people within the bureaucracy and the establishment who will be able to identify, pinpoint, counsel, and correct this kind of a practice that we've probably taken for granted that this is how we are used to living and that we can't change at any stage. But we will need to change if we are cognizant of the kind of price that the country is paying right now, as of other countries have paid. If we are cognizant of that, we will need to change our ways.
Okay, I get what you're saying, but and then of course the fact of the matter is that gradually we all have to move towards lesser restrictions as the numbers decrease. But what should be that timeline? Now, this is essentially what I wanted to understand. Dr. Joshi bases the data that we have, and in many cases, cities and districts, we are seeing a significant amount of improvement. But in other cases, like Mumbai, for example, or even Delhi, the cases are still coming in very large numbers. Will we have enough data by April 20th to decide for a large percentage of the country?
That in the red zones, it looks tough. Let me be very frank, because we have tested very less, and whatever we have tested, we have got a significant number. So in some of the red zones, I think it is a little gloomy prospect that we should expect that there will be unlocking even up to 10th or 15th of May. Let me be very transparent here. But in many areas, the oranges can also be green. And we need to look after two groups of individuals: the anxious, scared individuals and the restless people without food. I think people without food need food, ration and shelter. If they are given that, their restlessness will go. The anxious, fearful people need to do the distancing and hygiene right. But I feel that our peak is likely to come mid-May. And because our peak, and it is changing every time. You see, our doubling time, case doubling time is around 5 to 6 days. I wish it is 7 or 8 days. So the way the curve will go, it looks brighter now than what it was looking last week. I hope more reds become orange and the oranges become green. But it is, and as the summer ensues, let us hope and pray for that. But currently the reds, like Mumbai, might take a little longer time, particularly where there are large conglomerates or clusters or crowded situations like slum ghettos. So that might be still a challenge for us to address from a public health perspective. So that is a limitation. But for that, I think we should be optimistic.
Before I go across to Dr. Srivastava, in fact, let me just go across to Dr. Ritupriya. On this aspect, do you believe that, yes, perhaps the peaking and the number of cases will continue to rise well in May? And if that is so, then apart from perhaps the green zones, which have absolutely no cases, should the rest of the country even look at any kind of relaxation
I think we have
on April
to be
20th?
prepared for the fact. Hello?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Tanvi?
Yes, I
Hello?
can. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was saying that I completely agree with my previous speaker that the red zones, we are probably looking for a longer term than just even 3rd of May. And in other areas also, while one is hopeful that things will move from red to orange to green, I think we have to be realistic and recognize that things will also move the other way. And that those areas, we are in for a long haul. It may mean not just the few weeks up to 3rd of May, but go on longer. And therefore, we have to put in place right now. States have to do that very proactively for providing the food and shelter with dignity to those who don't have it in their homes right now. Only if that is done can we expect them to stay put and continue over the periods of time that we expect this epidemic to work itself out. That, to me, is going to be one of the biggest challenges for the states. And to be able to do that, They have to have the backing of the center and the Food Corporation of India, which must move the grains in its godowns to the states, and the states must move it to the people who need it right today.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, before I wrap this up and wrap up this debate, just one quick question also from Dr. Srivastav. Dr. Srivastav, how do we also ensure that even as the relaxations come into play, there is not significant movement from one side to the other? For example, right now, a big concern is that the minute you lift up the lockdown and restrictions, you will see a large part of the migrant population rush back home or want to go back home. Will that be a concern?
Yes, I think it will be a concern, Tanvi. Simply because it is a little difficult to persuade people to do things which they probably may not be willing to do at that stage, because already they would have gone through a month of being restricted in their movement. So that is likely to happen. It's more a rebound kind of reaction. It's not. I would probably expect that. But then again, that is where the administration comes in, where people will need to talk to the local administrators, people at the district level, at the sarpanch level, at the village level, particularly, not so much in the cities, but at those BNC centers, where you will have to talk to them. I think I'm hearing so many of those colleagues of mine who are in the interiors of their state saying the local administration is not prepared to listen because they feel that this is not the right thing to do insofar as quarantining or admitting a certain patient who may or may not be infected. So I think that the core is to talk to them at that level and to talk to them repeatedly. So some amount of relaxation will lead to a little bit of chaotic movement. Yes, I think that should be expected. But so long as you are able to implement a good about 80 to 90% of what you want to implement, I think we would have done well. But like I keep saying, the story where it is going to succeed or fail is what kind of communication there is going to be from the establishment to the menial worker, the man who's a daily wage worker. How much are you going to get him to listen and see what is good for the greater good of the community? You will need to talk to him, because otherwise we're going to just go back to
Right.
our ways, which were which is one of the reasons why we've had these numbers in our country.
Well, I keep repeating this again and again. Also, basis a lot of conversations that we've had in the last few weeks with experts like all of you. That I think we're far away from going back to the way we all lived our lives before coronavirus happened to us. But thank you so much to all three of you. Really appreciate you joining us in this conversation and sharing your views. Suffice to say, viewers, come April 20th, we will see individual states begin to make announcements. But if you're in a red zone, don't really think about it. You're going to be living pretty much the same lockdown life as you have been for the past few weeks, perhaps even stricter, because these are the zones where the battle will be tough. Those which are in the green zone and have not seen any cases in the last 1 month, there some amount of relief will begin to come in. But the point of caution will have to be in the fact that there cannot be any interzone movement. And even if there is a little bit of a sign coming in of cases in the orange or the green zone, then the authorities will have to move in quickly to ensure that there is again a complete lockdown and discipline is maintained. Completely out of time on this edition of The Conversation. Thank you for joining us.